Good afternoon, folks. This is Anthony here. Good day to all of you. And today, I would like to finally reveal the goodness that is this particular automation service. So, before we get started, I just want to show you that right now I am running a lab. I need to get rid of that lab real quick. So let me fix that. Make sure we get that taken care of. And you will notice we no longer have my new lab provisioned. So we're good there. Now what we need to do is also make sure that our API is not running, which it is. We want to turn the API off because we're going to reinstantiate it in a moment. But essentially, this is the way that this service works. Very brief overview. It is the config compliance service. It has multi-vendor support. It has a device inventory and a config policy API. They all fall under the same general API. There's a template renderer, and there is a log file that will be generated after the config compliance is assessed on an individual device, and that is all logged to a single file. Now, if we were to scale this, it would probably be more appropriate to have individual files, but for the sake of this particular course, for those who are attending this course, this is not the course itself. This is just an overview. This is to show those who are a part of the course what it is they'll come to expect, and for those who are not on the course, to show them what the prototype is, not getting into the details, and getting you guys excited about what is now and what will come in the near future. So I have a workflow here as well. This is all on GitHub, so go check out my GitHub. Follow me, add this if you want to. And what you'll see here, there's various make commands. I'm not going to get into what make does, but overall, the reason I use make is because it ties all of my different automation components together. And there's different stages of make. I have make deploy, make run, make cleanup. Make cleanup brings down the API and it removes the lab. Make deploy will deploy the topology, get the nodes set up and configured. Make run will run the actual config compliance checks, and then there's some other make stuff for tests and linting and standards compliance for code specifically, not the network devices. And then these are all the currently available endpoints for our API. In the future, there will be more methods here, but for our use case, this is really all we need in the beginning. Nothing more, nothing less. And all this is just a little Flask app. That's all it is. So, without further ado, let us begin our fun. What we will do now is we will say make deploy. It's going to take approximately 60 seconds or so to get this up and running. So what I'm going to do while we're waiting, I'm going to show you what we're going to do with these endpoints. The first thing that is going to happen is we're going to pull the API calls from the device's endpoints. We are going to use those variables and we're going to create base config templates. And then we're going to apply those through the API to our devices. Once that's all done, what will happen is when we run the actual service for the config compliance portion, it will first pull the current configs of the devices. Then, after that happens, it will make a call to the config policy API. It will iterate through every single one of those policies for each device. And once that happens, then you will have a parser applied to each of those policies. Okay? And the way we parse it is we're using Cisco Conf Parse. Now, take into account that this particular automation service does use Cisco and Arista, but the Cisco Conf Parse library does support both iOS and EOS. So we don't have to worry about using different libraries. Okay, so now we're deployed. It took us approximately 68 seconds to deploy. At this point, we have 9 nodes. I'm going to be using 10 nodes for the final product, but for our case, I just want to show 9 because I have 8 Cisco iOS nodes, and then the other one is a Arista node, just to show you that. So now that we have those, let me show you these devices now, or at least show you one of them. So the question is, I'm going to clear this up here. The question is, what are the IP addresses we're assigning to the devices? These are our rendered templates here. So let's look at R1. R1 is 170.30. So if I come back here and I try and SSH to 170.30, it's actually going to give me an error because I previously connected to 170.130, and what happened is in the SSH keys, it populated the old device, the device that was instantiated last time, so it's going to give me an error. It's going to say remote host identification has changed. And then what I can do is I can remove that line from this particular, from our known hosts. And there's all of the various hosts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that. We're going to save that. I'm going to connect again. And as you can see, it will allow me to connect again. But again, that's going to keep changing. So one thing that I may want to do in the future, depending on if I have a permissions problem doing it or not, is dynamically removing those SSH keys whenever I destroy the lab, because SSH keys are going to change every time. But if you look here, we indeed have, this was one of the configs from the configuration, and our username. Okay, so that is that. Now we have all that running. We are going to run the compliance service, and the way that I structured this, I actually have a sample report on GitHub. I don't store any more than a sample report on GitHub because every time I run the main script, which is what encompasses all the config compliance checks, it will generate a report and it'll timestamp it. So this one in particular I did on August 25th at 8:14 p.m. So I'm going to run this again, and it's going to give me another one. Okay. So all I have to do is I have to say make run, and it'll run the magic. Actually, there is one thing I'm concerned about. So the Arista device, last time I tried getting it to work, it was having trouble taking the config over the API, so I'm not actually sure. Yeah, so this device, actually, I need to take care of this, because what's going to happen is we're collecting the device configs now, and what's going to happen is we're going to get this NetMiko exception timed out, and for some reason I can't get to this device. So I'm curious if, because usually I can get over it from serial connection. But either way, I wouldn't worry about that at the moment. I'm going to fix that before we have to deal with all the crazy. There is a compliance folder here which will contain the reports, and as you see, I have a report that was ran. This is our report. Looks like it's still not coming up. Yeah, we'll have to look at that later, because usually that should already be up. So this is what it did. It went through all the hosts. It found which policies were problematic. And then it logged it here. So that's the whole config compliance service, which is really nice, honestly. I'm not going to show you. I will briefly. Actually, I'm not going to show the API. The API is for those who are going to be in the course. Get excited about the course. That's all I'm going to say. Now, if you have any feedback, questions, then hit me up, DMs and Twitter, or you can comment here in the YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to the channel, check out my website, subscribe to the newsletter if you're interested, and next time we will cover something just as cool, if not cooler. All right, thanks guys.